All right, for any of you who've been at an IAYMH before, you know we start our closing ceremony, which you've just done, but then we move into our Locknote, and I always think it's a fantastic part of the conference, so we kind of lock into what it is we've found, what it is we've observed. So I'm going to have a very brief conversation with two of my colleagues. Now they're going in another direction, but no matter, we'll
I need a microphone.
Which? Microphones. Yes, yes, we'll just take them from here. Yes, thank you very much. So we're going to, I'm going to have we have a Locknote address, and then I'll finally close out with a thank you to others. Okay. All right, I'll sit with you. We have two. Thank you. All right, thank you. So we've just come to the end of nearly 3 days together, and certainly I think we've had, I hope, a very good, thought-provoking 3 days. But before I do so, I have three people who are with me: Magenta Simmons, Jazz Elliott, and Aryan Kapoor, who are going to each reflect on what they've observed over the last 3 days. So I'm going to ask you first, so each one of you, if you might think about what themes have you noticed across the 3 days that struck you as something that was really important?
I'll go first, and I went to the wrong PhD school because I cried for the past hour, so forgive whatever I look like. I think, Elder Dan just spoke to us about being grateful for the resources that we provide, and so I'm really taking that message that we are all resources, and I guess in some way or another we are all creators of knowledge, and we need to put that knowledge to purpose, to use. And if we want to do that, we need really clear messaging so that it gets translated into policy and practice. And in the age of misinformation and disinformation, that's so important to be an effective resource and be really clear about what we know, but at the same time I feel the confidence unravelling, because there's just so many different ways that you can look at knowledge, value knowledge, and we have just seen so many amazing examples of that, and not just knowledge, but thinking and doing. And I love the practical nature of people who see problems in their communities and then do something about that. I think that's where we've ended up, and so what I'll be taking is to really think about what can I do as a resource to make the use of the knowledge that we're all creating.
Thanks, Magenta.
It's really difficult, I think. I've been reflecting a lot over the last 3 days about what I've been thinking and hearing, and also what I've been feeling. And I'd like to shout out to all of the young people in the room with lived experience, and those who are older with lived experience, the ways that this conference can feel very heavy at times and very optimistic at times. And it can be very exhausting feeling all of those feelings. So I'd like to hold space for those feelings that you might be feeling as well. What I've noticed, I think, throughout the last 3 days is a lot of tensions between different binaries, individualism versus collectivism, flexibility versus structure, lived experience versus learned and, formal knowledge. And I think there's that pressure, and I've been accused many times by a therapist that I've got very black and white thinking, and I like to have an answer. And during some of these conversations, I felt really stuck. We can't really win. This thing's not a good idea, this thing's not a good idea, but what else is there? And I think landing on that idea that we can have multiple things at the same time, we can take the positives of different professions, positives of different ways of thinking, positives of different ways of connecting and being, in the way that we can individualise experience and focus on the person, but we can also focus on the structures around them and focus on connection, because that's what we've learnt, or what I've learnt throughout my own experience and throughout this conference, is that connection is really important. So we can have connection, and we can also focus on the individual. And I think just learning that we can have multiple things at once, and learning what are the best parts of those things has really come through this conference.
Okay, this is a really tough job. I've been trying very hard to reflect, and in many ways, from all the voices that we've heard in the past 3-4 days, and try and find the universal. And I think I've been able to come down to 3 universal principles that have emerged for me. I think the first thing that I'm taking back is, and which has come strongly in a lot of presentations and voices, is an ethics of engagement, in terms of how should we be engaging with communities as people who belong to communities, to those communities, and also as those who don't. And for me, that has been one of the biggest takeaways, because I also come from a country, India, which has immense diversity, but also immense inequality. And I think drawing from those experiences and to learn from what I've heard over here and seen over here in practice, for me is an incredible learning. And in fact, it also reminds me of something that Bell Hooks said, and if I have your permission, I'd like to quote it. Bell Hooks, in her book All About Love, talks about a love ethic, because she's talking about how our societies are actually broken, and there is a certain lovelessness, and we need to build a certain kind of love ethic that can bind all of us together. And she defines the love ethic as the underlying values of a culture, and its ethics shape and inform the way we speak and act. A love ethic presupposes that everyone has the right to be free, to live fully and well. To bring a love ethic to every dimension of our lives, our society would need to embrace change. And I think in many ways, in the presentations we've heard and seen, we've seen a manifestation of that love ethic. The second thing that I've also observed in a lot of the work that's been happening is the centrality of identity of young people, because identity in many ways is a historical phenomenon. Identities are shaped at a particular time in our history, the circumstances that we grow in. But I think what's incredibly universal, despite the diversity of identities that we need to be engaging with, is the need for social connection, for acceptance, for respect, for dignity. And that's another manifestation that I've seen in a lot of the work, incredible work that's been happening across the world, and that was also represented here. The third and the final reflection is, I think, this need and hunger and desire for transforming systems fundamentally. And I think a lot of us share that frustration as people who are doing research, who are doing practice on the ground. But our frustration also comes in when we're trying to change systems, and systems which are broken. And I think a lot of these insights have also looked at how do we translate research into practice and into policy changes, which eventually lead to structural changes. But I'm also left with something that Seren had mentioned in the first, in the plenary session, that equity is about transforming systems and roots. And when you design and create for the most vulnerable, you do it for all. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to have one last question for each of our three Locknote speakers, particularly they've spent so much time reflecting over the last 3 days. So I think that was fantastic. You know, you took us right back to the beginning, but I'm going to get you to think about the future. So what next? I'll start with you, Aryan, this time.
Oh boy, I was looking at magenta. All right. What next?
Nothing like pressure.
Well, I think it's a difficult world we live in today. It's a difficult time, and I think there are lots of things happening at a global level, some of which we've already discussed in the past sessions around misinformation, disinformation, generational conflict between generations, within generations. And perhaps I think as we move forward, and I'm drawing on what Pat had mentioned in terms of paradigm changes, I'm curious to see how we take our learnings back from here and think about how we want to change the paradigms within which we are doing our work, within which we're asking the questions and the research that we are doing. And I'm also reminded of Thomas Kuhn, who wrote the book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he said that scientific revolutions happen when you change paradigms. But when you change paradigms, you're also building on the work that has already happened. But then you're also thinking of a new imagination, and you're asking new questions. And I think given the world that we live in today, with the kind of conflict, the diversity, also immense hope, and stories of solidarity, my wish would be for us to go back and think about, question the paradigms within which we are functioning in, and also look at how we can revise those. Thank you.
So I think a big next step for me personally is to, and the young people in the room know this, if you're not a young person, you've missed out on being on one of the most hectic WhatsApp chats that have existed ever, is to really reflect about the structures of privilege that exist in these types of spaces and the ways that we can open it up to more young people, more researchers, more people on the front line, more grassroots activists, the list goes on, but people from the world who aren't represented here today, and how to make the space more accessible for the people who are in the room today. I think it's really exciting that we've got 29% of conference attendees under the age of 30. That's something that we just don't see anywhere else, even in specific youth mental health conferences and child and adolescent conferences, but there's certainly ways that we can improve upon, and that's a lot of work that I hope to do in the next chapter, looking at IAYMH. And the second component, I think, is continuing these connections. I'm a little bit obsessed with this conference. I talk to lots of people about it back home. It holds a special place in my heart because it is a space where we all have our different perspectives and ideas, but we're all united by the fact that we think youth mental health is really important and that we need to be doing better in this space. I attended a oral session yesterday, and two of the presenters actually started collaborating out of some discussions that they had in Copenhagen 2022 and then co-presented at this conference. And I think there was that discussion about paddling and coordinating our paddling together so that we're not rocking the boat, we're not falling in the water. And I think that this is a space that we really, really need to be coordinating our paddling so that we're getting closer to our destination, which is a better world for young people and better youth mental health. So I think that connection component is so, so essential. I'm really excited to continue to foster those connections that I've formed, and I hope you continue to foster the ones that you formed as well.
The clock has gone to zero, so I won't be too lengthy with my response. But I've been so lucky to be at 6 of the 7 IAYMH conferences, and I used to have to scratch and find to try and find other people doing work in the lived experience space or the peer support space, and I cannot tell you that, how thrilling it is to see that just explode, and to come to this conference and see that it's prevalent in almost every presentation, that these things are mentioned. It's so heartening, but it does, again, make you think about who's not in the room, and I really wanted to give a shout out to families, caregivers, chosen families, significant others. And I'm just really looking forward to connecting with those who have caregiving responsibilities and don't have the luxury to come to a conference like this. The other thing that I've seen it changed dramatically, over those conferences is the, increase in diversity in terms of the countries represented at this conference. And absolutely, it's nowhere near what we need for a global conference to say that this conference is truly global. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing, what happens in the next 18 months to work towards the next conference, so that we invite more friends into the room.
Thank you, Magenta. And I think that's a perfect way to actually end the formal part. I'm not even going to wrap up even further on that. I think that's a beautiful way to finish out. And I think it does reflect more to do, lots done. All right, so I just have a few thank yous. So I just might stand up at the mic there for a moment. Do you want to? Yeah. Okay, they're going to. Yeah, I'll just.
Thanks, I'll do that one.
For some of you might say, well, that's the boring part of the afternoon now, is to do the thank yous. But to be honest, a conference like this doesn't happen without a whole load of people in the background. And I'm going to start off, firstly, maybe following on from Magenta, was to thank all our delegates for being here. Nearly 950 of you who came here. You made it, this conference, I think, a fantastic conference, a great event, a buzz, and from 48 countries. Lots done, and we know more to do. But to have 48 countries in the room with us and I know I'm the same as Magenta. I've only missed one of these conferences as well, and that was when it was the very first one when it was in Melbourne. I've been at them all after that. And there is a diversity in the room now that we didn't see in the earlier conferences. So we are getting better. We definitely have more to do. I think our plenary speakers have provoked us to think about where we are now, more importantly, what we need to do. And I love the connections across the different themes in terms of who we're connected to, who we are, and I think that sense of place and space. So as an Irish woman, I can tell you, we too would have things about who we are as a people, who we connect to, and so I can some of that when I'm listening to how people reflect on their own identities, we too have those reflections. So I think many of us will resonate very much with that, even if I am a white woman, but there are things about other identities too. So I think we were looking at turning the tide of rising mental health distress in young people globally, but I think we were here not only to actually look at the problem. I think we're far more productive when we start looking at solutions. And I think what we heard over the last 3 days was people trying to think about what solutions might work. We can all know what the problems are, but we need to think about what are the solutions. And again, to the 30% of our delegates who are young people, again, that number, not big enough, we know, but it does allow us to make sure we're in the room with the right voice. And it's the voice of young people are key to creating our solutions. You are the future. You are the hope. But then more to the actual nitty-gritty of thanking people. I'm going to start off with our programme committee, which was co-chaired between Owen Kalaki and Avni Dillon, I think is correct. Am I right on that? Thank you. Who over the last nearly 18 months, certainly over a year, coming together so regularly, down to nearly weekly at a certain point, and without the chairs and all the people on that committee, we wouldn't be here. And we also had over 900 abstracts, and we had a committee who reviewed those abstracts to create the programme of quality presentations that we had over the last three days. So I thank each and every one of you who actually had a part in that. And our organising committee, again, what would the conference be like? Who should be in the room? What's the shape, the feel, the look of our conference? And the organising committee were key to that. We had Vivian Cross from Jack.org, who's co-partnered with IAYMH, and worked very closely with Jazz Elliott, who's here with us, and Ezekiel Nana. So Jazz has been core to many conferences. Many thanks, Jazz. Always stepping up when the ask comes out. And I think to the executive, again, we meet very regularly thinking about where we are in terms of where we want to go. How do we push this movement forward? So I thank all of the members of the executive, but one person in particular. So Faranami Omatayan, who is Nigerian, who was not able to be, and some people will have heard yesterday, there was people say that he wasn't able to be here with he is one of our vice presidents, a youth vice president. He's from Nigeria, and he was unable to get a visa, and we are really sad that he couldn't be with us here. So we acknowledge not only his work, but also that he was very missed as part of being here in this conference. Obviously our sponsors, and we know that Jack.org works so hard that we know a conference, and I know there's people, we say we want to have more people in the room, but a conference like this does take, it is quite expensive to run, and our sponsors are critical in terms of making sure we're able to do this. And in each of the rooms, those sponsors would have been there, so we're really thankful, and we hope that for those sponsors who were able to come to the conference, that you see the value of your sponsorship to actually the work that we are doing. And the convention centre, I think we've been looked after really well. Thank you to all the staff here, and to Advantage, who is our professional conference organising partner. They too had a real hand and part in making sure we had an experience that we felt that we were looked after, we were able to have our conversations, and that the conference ran as well as any conference can. There's always things that we can do better, we know that, but as well as it can. I want to wish you all a safe journey back to your families, wherever that may may be, whether it's local or further away. Those of us who are trying to get to London tonight, we're hoping our flights will leave. Not that we want to leave the Vancouver area, but it's we unfortunately do need to return. So I just want to thank you all, and that's a wrap, and hope to see you all at the next one. Oh, one more. Sorry.
You can't escape without saying thank you to you, Barbara, because the thing about being the president, and we've heard about culture today, saying Oktaram. The thing is, you've described all the meetings that I was at and other people were at, but you were at all of those. So I think you've been working on this 7 days a week for the last year. So just big acknowledgement to you. Gaurav Mil Matagat.
Gaurav Mahagathon. We can speak in our mother tongue. Gaurav Mahagathon. So yes, thank you so much. But it's been my pleasure. I'm 20 years in this space. I'm not a newbie, and I just think it's so important. But I'm actually also sad to think I'm 20 years in this space, and yet we have a lot to do. But many thanks, and safe travels.